There was a time when Nigeria was often described as one of Africa's brightest holes, a country with fertile lands, enormous natural resources, a growing economy, and a population full of possibilities. Before crude oil became the center of everything, Nigeria was already producing wealth from agriculture. The North was famous for its granite pyramids. The West was known around the world for cocoa production. The East was a major player in palm oil exports. Nigeria was not just feeding itself, it was exporting products that supported industries around the world. But today, decades later, Nigeria is facing a very different reality. A country with some of the largest oil reserves in Africa still struggles with power supply, unemployment, infrastructure, and economic hardship. Millions of Nigerians look at the country's potentials and ask one question: how did a nation with so much promise end up here? Was Nigeria always destined for these challenges? Did oil become a blessing or a curse? Were the problem caused by leadership, poor planning, external forces, or a combination of everything? And perhaps the bigger question: could Nigeria have become one of the world's strongest economies if things had gone differently? This is the story of Nigeria's rise, its missed opportunities, and choices that shaped the country we know today. Welcome to our channel, Behind the Venture. To understand Nigeria's current situation, we have to go back to the beginning. Before Nigeria became independent, in 1960, the country was already recognized as a place with enormous economic potentials. Nigeria was not wealthy because of oil. In fact, oil was not yet foundation of economy. The country's strength came from what it could produce. Agriculture was the backbone of the economy. In the north, farmers produced large quantities of granules, cotton, and other crops. The famous granite pyramid of Kano became a symbol of economic success. These pyramids were not just piles of crops. They represented an organized agricultural system where farmers, traders, and exporters worked together to create wealth. In the western region, cocoa became one of Nigeria's biggest exports. Cocoa farmers generated revenue that helped fund major development, including education and infrastructure projects. The eastern region was known for palm produce. Palm oil and palm kernels were highly valuable commodities in international markets. Nigeria had what many countries today spend billions to buy: a productive agricultural economy, a strong export base, and regional industries that created wealth outside government. One example of this progress was education. Institutions such as the University of Ibadan, established in 1948, became symbols of Nigeria's ambition to develop human capital. The country was building foundations for growth. However, Nigeria was not without challenges. The colonial system had created divisions between regions. The economy was still heavily dependent on exporting raw materials rather than developing industries that could transform those resources locally. But despite these limitations, many indicators showed that Nigeria had a promising future. After independence, expectations were high. Many believed Nigeria could become one of the leading nations in Africa, and for a while, that possibility seemed very real. Then something happened that completely changed the direction of Nigerian economy, a discovery that brought unimaginable wealth, but also created problems that the country could struggle with for decades. That discovery was oil. Now, let's talk about the oil boom. In the late 1950s, Nigeria discovered commercial quantities of crude oil. At first, oil was just another resource among many, but everything changed in the 1970s. The global oil crisis caused oil price to rise dramatically, and countries that produce oil suddenly had access to enormous amounts of money. Nigeria was one of them. Oil revenue began flowing into government accounts at a level the country had never experienced before. For the first time, the government had billions of dollars available for national development. Roads were built, new institutions were created, infrastructure projects expanded. The government had more financial power than ever before. But this new wealth also created a major shift. Nigeria slowly moved away from the economic model that had existed before independence. Agriculture, which had once been the foundation of the economy, began receiving less attention. Many young people moved away from farming, believing that government jobs and oil-related opportunities offered a better future. The country that once depended heavily on agricultural exports became increasingly dependent on crude oil. This created a situation economists called Dutch disease. Dutch disease happens when a country earns huge amount of money from one natural resource, but that success weakens other part of the economy. In Nigeria's case, oil brought in foreign exchange, but it also made other sectors less competitive. Instead of using oil wealth to build diverse economy with strong manufacturing, technology, and agriculture, the country became heavily reliant on crude oil revenue. And this dependence created a serious problem. Whenever oil prices were high, Nigeria had money. But whenever oil prices dropped, the economy suffered. The oil boom also changed expectations. Government became the center of economic activity. Many businesses depended on government contracts. Many states depended almost entirely on monthly allocation from oil revenue. The question was no longer only how do we produce more? It became how do we share the money coming from oil. This change affected the way the economy developed. Countries that discovered natural resources often faced a similar challenge. Resources can create opportunities, but without strong institutions and careful planning, they can also create dependence. Nigeria had a historic opportunity. The country had money. It had a large population, it had natural resources, it had the chance to invest heavily in industries that could compete globally. And some investments were made, but many decisions during this period would later become subject of debate. The 1970s and early 1980s were a period of huge ambition. Nigeria wanted to prove that it could become a major industry power. The government launched massive projects and spent billions developing infrastructure. But behind the excitement of the oil boom was a growing problem. The country was becoming too dependent on one source of income. And when the oil money started reducing, the weakness of the system became impossible to ignore. The same resources that was supposed to transform Nigeria would eventually expose many of the country's deepest economic challenges. The Nigeria of 1970s was a country with confidence. Oil revenue gave the government the ability to think on a much larger scale. The ambition was clear. Nigeria wanted to become a modern industrial nation. One of the biggest examples of this confidence was Festac 77, the Second World Black and African Festac of Arts and Culture brought together thousands of participants from across Africa and the global Black community. Nigeria spent heavily on the event, building facilities and infrastructure, including the National Art Theatre in Lagos. For many Nigerians, Festac represented more than a cultural celebration. It showed a country announcing itself to the world, a country saying, "We have arrived." But beyond cultural projects, Nigeria also pursued industrial development. The government invested in steel production, refineries, manufacturing plants, and large infrastructure projects. The idea was simple: use oil wealth to build industries that would create jobs and reduce dependence on imports. One of the biggest examples was the Ajaokuta Steel Project. The vision was for Nigeria to have its own steel industry that could support construction, manufacturing, and engineering. If success, it could have become one of the foundations of industrialization. However, many of these ambitious projects faced challenges. Some suffered from delays. Some became more expensive than originally planned. Others struggled because of poor management, changing policies, or political instability. The problem was not that Nigeria lacked ideas. The problem was turning those ideas into sustainable systems. A country's development is not built only by announcing big projects. It requires consistency. It requires institutions that work regardless of who is in power. It requires long-term planning that survives changes in government. And this was where Nigeria began facing deeper difficulties. After the oil boom years came a period of political instability. Military government took control for several decades, and economic policies changed frequently. This affected investors' confidence and slowed the growth of many sectors. The country had resources, it had ideas, but stability and effective execution became more challenges. And gradually, the gap between Nigeria's potential and its reality began to grow. Nigeria's challenges did not come from one single event. There was no single day when everything went wrong. Instead, it was a combination of decisions, missed opportunities, and structural problems that built up over time. One of the biggest factors was political instability. From the 1960s to the late 1990s, Nigeria experienced several military governments. During this period, policies often changed whenever new leaders came into power. A factory owner who invested today could not always be sure that the economic environment would remain the same tomorrow. A development project started by one government could lose priority under another. Long-term economic planning became difficult, and development requires something Nigerians struggled with for many years, and that is consistency. Countries that successfully transformed, their economies usually had one thing in common. They created systems that worked beyond individual leaders. Their policies were not constantly changing. Their institutions were strong enough to maintain directions. Nigeria struggled to build this kind of continuity. Let's talk about the problem of dependence on oil. Another major challenge was oil dependence. By the 1980s, crude oil had become the dominant resources of By the 1980s, crude oil had become the dominant resource. By the 1980s, crude oil had become the dominant source of government revenue and foreign exchange. This created a dangerous situation. When oil prices were high, government income increased, but when price dropped, the entire economy felt the impact. Instead of having multiple strong sectors supporting each other, Nigeria became vulnerable to events outside its control. A decision made in global oil market could affect government budgets, businesses, and ordinary Nigerians. This dependence also affected how government approached development. When money came easily from oil, there was less pressure to build strong systems for collecting taxes, improving productivity, and supporting private businesses. Now, let's talk about corruption and weak institutions. Another issue often discussed in Nigeria's development strategy is corruption. Corruption itself was not unique to Nigeria. Many countries have faced corruption while developing. The difference is how strong their institutions are in preventing and punishing it. Where institutions are weak, public resources meant for roads, schools, healthcare, and industries can be lost through poor management and misuse. Over the years, Nigeria lost opportunities because resources were not always converted into lasting development. A country can have billions of dollars in revenue, but if those resources are not properly managed, the population may not experience meaningful improvement. The biggest impact of these problems was felt by ordinary Nigerians. A growing population needed more jobs, businesses needed reliable electricity, students needed quality education, communities needed better infrastructure. But economic growth did not always translate into better living conditions for everyone. Nigeria's population continued growing rapidly, creating both an opportunity and a challenge. A large young population can become a powerful workforce, but without enough jobs, skills development, and opportunities, it can also increase pressure on the economy. But was Nigeria alone? It is important to understand that Nigeria's story is not unique. Many countries with natural resources have struggled with similar challenges. Countries can have oil, minerals, and other valuable resources and still experience economic difficulties. The difference often comes down to how those resources are managed. Natural resources can provide the foundation for development, but they cannot replace good institutions, education, innovation, and productive industries. Nigeria's biggest missed opportunity was not discovering oil. Oil has transformed many countries. The biggest challenge was failing to use the wealth to build an economy that could succeed even without oil. But while Nigeria was dealing with these internal challenges, other countries were following a different path. Countries like China and India were making decisions that would eventually reshape their economies. Their journeys were different from Nigeria. They had their own problems, but they focused heavily on areas that Nigeria struggled to develop, and that is manufacturing, industrialization, human capital, and long-term economic planning. So what lessons can Nigeria learn from countries that moved faster? Now, let's talk about why China and India moved faster. When people compare Nigeria with countries like China and India, the comparison is often simplified. Some say, why did these countries succeed while Nigeria struggled? But the reality is more complicated. Every country has its own history, challenges, and advantages. However, there are important lessons from their development journeys. One major difference was their focus on building productive industries. China, especially from the late 1970s, focused heavily on manufacturing. The country invested in factories, infrastructure, exports, and skills development. It became known as the world's manufacturing center. India took a different path. It developed strong sectors in areas such as technology, pharmaceuticals, and services. Both countries had large populations, just like Nigeria, but they focused on turning their populations into economic assets. A large population is not automatically an advantage. It becomes an advantage when people have education, skills, jobs, and opportunities to create value. Now, let's talk about this. Is Nigeria beyond repair? After everything Nigeria has experienced, one question remains: has Nigeria already missed its opportunity? The answer is not as simple as yes or no. Nigeria has faced serious challenges, but the country still has some of the same advantages that made people optimistic decades ago. In fact, some of those advantages are even stronger today. Now, let's talk about the power of Nigeria's population. Nigeria has one of the youngest populations in the world. This is often described as a challenge because millions of young people need education, jobs, and opportunities. But it can also become one of Nigeria's greatest strengths. Countries grow when their people are productive. A young population means a large workforce, a growing consumer market, and a millions of potential innovations. The question is not whether Nigeria has enough people. The question is whether the country can create the environment where those people can succeed. Now, let's talk about technology and the new Nigeria economy. One area where Nigeria has shown impressive progress is technology. Over the last decade, Nigerian startups have attracted international attention. Companies in fintech, digital payments, e-commerce, and software development have shown that Nigerian businesses can compete globally. Young Nigerians are also working remotely for companies around the world, earning income from skills rather than traditional employment. This shows something important. Nigeria does not lack talent. The challenge has always been creating systems that allow talent to grow. Now, let's talk about agriculture, the opportunity that still exists. Agriculture remains another major opportunity. Nigeria has millions of hectares of arable land and a climate suitable for producing different crops. But modern agriculture is not just about farming. The biggest opportunity is building the entire value chain: processing, storage, transportation, packaging, exports. A country that produces crops but imports processed food products is losing a major part of the economic opportunity. The future of agriculture is not simply returning to the past. It is using technology and investment to create a modern agricultural industry. Now let's talk about the role of leadership and institutions. However, opportunities alone are not enough. Countries do not develop because they have resources. They develop because they create systems that allow resources to benefit their people. Nigeria's future depends on improving institutions. This means creating policies that support businesses, building reliable infrastructure, improving education, encouraging innovation, and creating an environment where people can plan for the future with confidence. Development is not achieved overnight. Countries that transform themselves usually spend decades building. Now, let's conclude our story by looking at the Nigeria that still can be. Nigeria's story is not simply a story of failure. It is a story of enormous potential, major achievements, missed opportunities, and difficult lessons. The country once depended on agriculture. Then oil changed everything. Oil brought wealth, but it also created dependence. Ambitious projects were started, but many challenges prevented them from reaching their full potential. Political instability, weak institutions, economic dependence, and poor planning all played a role. But Nigeria's story is not finished. The same country that produced global writers, entrepreneurs, scientists, athletes, and innovators still has the ability to create a different future. The question is no longer only what went wrong. The bigger question is, what will Nigeria do with the opportunities that remain? Because nations are not defined only by their past. They are defined by the decisions they make moving forward. Nigeria has the resources. Nigeria has the people. Nigeria has the potential. The challenge is building the system that can turn potential into progress. This has been Behind the Venture. If you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe for more stories about businesses, economies, countries, and the ideas that shape our world. Thank you for watching this video, and see you in our next video. Do well to let us know the lessons you have learned in this video, and if you have any contributions or whatever you want to say about this or any topic, please do well to drop it in the comment sections. Thanks, and see you next. Bye.